And we're live! Hello, I'm Lee Damon. I don't have to look that part up in my script, but I do want to make sure I get the date right because I don't want to mess that up. Tuesday, March 29th, and this is the 7th installment of Usenix's Lisa Conversations. As I said, I'm Lee Damon, Senior Computing Specialist at the University of Washington.
And I'm Tom Limoncelli, your co-host. I'm a site reliability engineer at StackOverflow.com, and each month, Lisa Conversations brings you a speaker from a past Usenix conference to discuss their presentation and find out, hey, what's new?
If you're watching live, we'd love to have your questions. We already have one, but more would be good. You can submit them using the Q&A button, which should be in the upper right-hand corner of your screen display. If you don't see it, look for the 3x3 grid of dots. Click on that, and you should get the Q&A button at that point. Kim, who's hiding in the background, will be monitoring, and will let us know if any questions come in.
In this episode, we'll be talking with Caskey Dickson of Microsoft. Caskey gave an amazing talk at Lisa 15 titled, Why Your Manager Loves Technical Debt and What to Do About It. Caskey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. This is a really cool concept, and I think it's a great thing that's going on with Usenix to keep the Lisa conversation going throughout the year. And so I'm really happy to be here and glad to contribute.
We're definitely glad you're here as well. I noticed that when I first became aware of you or first met you, you were at a Rainbowy company, and you're not there anymore. So why don't you tell us what you do at your new employer, which I believe is over on the east side of the lake from me.
Yeah, it's a little computer shop. We do some cloud services and had an operating system product for a while. Just about a month before Lisa, last year, I moved to Microsoft from Google. I'm part of the brand new SRE organization that we're building out here. I'm one of the lead SREs on the senior management team reporting to the executive leadership of all of Azure inside of Cloud and Enterprise. And so what I do now is I provide leadership and inspiration.
Oop, you're getting a little feedback there.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if that was me or I think I was getting louder and louder. Yeah, so I provide leadership
Trying to tell you to talk slow.
To the existing operations and development groups inside of Microsoft, as well as we've begun a bunch of projects to completely reinvent how we do software engineering, how we do deployments, how we do everything here in a much more organized fashion. As a company, Microsoft's realized that unification of method across divisions is really important, and so that combined with the fact that Satya has declared that we are now a cloud and devices company, it's a really big effort here because inside of Microsoft there are fully 5 separate cloud platforms because it all evolved separately. Bing, Azure, Office 365, Xbox, these all run extremely large data centers with very large compute loads, and we're trying to get commonality among them, and it's a really huge project that's going to be, a decade in the making.
Cool. So obviously your position hasn't necessarily changed since you gave your presentation, since it changed just before you gave your presentation. So I won't bother with that question. If you could give us, I was originally going to call it the elevator pitch, but then I realized we don't have a tall enough building. So if you could give us like a 2-minute synopsis of your talk.
Certainly. In a nutshell, we all use the phrase technical debt all the time. I've used it hundreds of times. In fact, I've used it 4 times today that I can recall just in the past couple of meetings. Because it's a beautiful concept as engineers, because we all know that there's that debt, that undone work that we've left behind inside of our systems. But the problem is that, speaking with a business hat on, a lot of people don't know that I also have a master's in business administration. Debt is one of those things that is a valuable financial tool companies leverage to finance operations. And so it's not fundamentally a bad thing. we think of debt, we think of consumer debt, which is bad, but commercial debt is an entirely different animal. And so we need to make sure that we're talking in languages that our managers can understand.
Right. So, like, I might say, "Oh no, I'm in all this debt," and I know that that's a bad thing. But to a business person, debt means investment has been made, and if we play our cards right, it's going to pay off, and that's awesome.
I think we just lost our guest.
Sure. I'll just. I'm sure he's reconnecting to fix the feedback problem. But anyway, yeah. So, but a business person hears debt and they think investment. This is great. I'm sure it'll have some kind of payoff soon. You know, if we do the right businessy things. So when they hear technical debt, try as we might to explain that technical debt's a bad thing. What they're hearing cognitively is, yay, like this must be a good thing. Some technical investment that'll pay off later.
Yeah, and that was the first half of his presentation. The second half was suggesting that we should call it. His name for it was the suck, and I want to wait until he gets back to discuss possible names that could be used.
Right. Why don't we just kind of pause? I think it'd be easier to edit if we just.
Well, the thing is, we are of course showing live. So we apologize to our viewers. Please stand by for technical difficulties.
For live viewers, we can.
I don't know. We can do a song and dance.
Well, you sing, right?
No.
You're more on the technical side of stuff. I was the reason I botched the introduction, by the way, is I was going to say I'm SRE at Stack Overflow and proprietor of bestspaghettisauceever.com, but I flaked and I couldn't think of the word proprietor, so I totally flubbed that line. It's a one-page website that has my mother's recipe on it, by the way, for people looking for. We could do cooking tips. There hasn't been a good cooking tip thing on at Lisa for what, 5 years?
Well, we did the closing talk in 2007.
Yeah, that's
was about sysadmins and cooking.
Oh, so that's a lot more than.
Yeah, and I don't remember anybody doing it. Maybe
ago.
We should organize one like that at Lisa 16. I don't know. Call for proposals for Lisa 16 is open, and if somebody wants to propose some sort of tie-in between computers and system administration and cooking, maybe something could be done.
So, I had kind of expected Caskey to be back by now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could. I'm afraid that if we start talking about his talk more, we're just going to repeat all of it when he comes back.
Yeah, I don't want to go there.
Oh, wait a minute. Here we go.
Oh, he's back. Welcome back. Yes.
All right. I'm actually on my phone now because my laptop is completely crapped out and the Wi-Fi can't access the internet. So we'll try and continue this way. That'll be interesting.
Okay. Well, the audio quality is excellent.
Oh, well, even better. So yeah, this was, it's belt and suspenders. I had my backup device, but at the last minute I remembered, oh, noise, and so instead of turning the volume down, I turned it off, and it took a bit to boot my phone again.
No problem. Okay.
Welcome back.
Let's so that we can do a clean edit. Let's just pause for like 2 seconds and then
go.
All right. So actually, where was I? When did I get cut off?
So, well, actually, you were talking about the technical debt, and I was saying that I was kind of repeating back what you were saying, that our boss, or we know that technical debt is a bad thing, but when our boss hears it, they think in the financial term, if there was debt, then that's investment that if we do the right business things should pay off. So technical debt sounds like a good thing, and no matter what we do to convince them that it's not intended to be good, cognitively they're going to hear it as a good thing.
Yeah, and because they're thinking of it as, because reality is you want to believe that, okay, we made a conscious decision to not do some of this engineering work. But instead, I think my profile pic just popped up because I don't have enough bandwidth for the video. So they're thinking of it in terms of it smooths out the load of work by we skip doing some tasks today, we'll get back to them later when we have more time, but there's never the more time period. In business, it's, okay, we get big contracts that come in, we bill a lot in this month, but next month there'll be no billing because the work's ongoing for work that'll be billed the month after that. So by borrowing money and by smoothing out the flow of cash to make sure that every month you have a consistent value you can give, it makes it easier to predict the business. But in technology, we just never come back and fix things.
Sure, sure.
So the goal is of my talk was to encourage us to have conversations in other ways with our manager by saying, okay, what we have isn't debt, it's unplanned future downtime, unpredictable downtime that's baked into our product. And how much unpredictable downtime do you want to have already built into your service? And most managers will be like, no, I don't want any downtime built into my service, you know?
So the one person who posted to the Google Plus event, Andrej, Andrej, I have no idea how to say that properly, I apologize, suggested calling it prospective cost. And his comment was to include inflation, which increases with project life, and you get situation where you save $X today on duct tape solution, risking much higher future costs fixing and modifying.
That's a very nice way of putting it. I think that's worth thinking about.
Yeah. So actually, I had also made a note when I was watching your video the first time, I think, suggesting that we should call it viscosity. But I think I like his comment better.
Yeah, you know, viscosity is good because the other thing that technical debt does that people realize is it slows down your pace of innovation in your company. Because every time you're getting into that spaghetti code where you're like, you know, somebody really hacked in something last time and it's not there, it's not easy for me to modify and enhance and extend. But that means I either now say, okay, I'm going to add a day, a week to my project to go and fix this, so I can then do the work that I want to do, and then so instead people hack on top of it, and you then have paid interest on that debt and increased it at the same time.
Yeah, and it never gets better. It's always getting more thick.
Yeah, and you know this actually leads me to this is a concept that we've been discussing and I've been talking about, and that is that V next is the enemy of V now, because what happens is you build up all of this technical debt and you end up with this clunky, difficult system, and you're like, oh, this is just so hard to work with. You know what we're going to do? We're going to go and we're going to spin up a new team to go and build the version of the next version of the product, right? Now what happens then is you get brain drain out of the current version of the service. Everybody goes and wants to work on the cool new thing and not maintain the legacy system, which is going to still be over there for 5 years. And you've basically starved the place that needs the most engineering effort of the people who can do the work.
I totally agree. When you, I mean, the big problem there is the current running version now diverges from the development version, and the more that divergence gets, A, you have to fix every bug twice, and yeah. B, the launch of the new version becomes more and more risky.
Yeah, very much so. And then even worse is somebody says, okay, we're going to launch the new version. It doesn't do everything that the old version does, and now you're supporting both the new version and the old version side by side.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and we see that in online commercial products where there's, you know, try out the new version, it doesn't do everything the old version does, and you end up having to split two different ways. And if you're trying to operate a service and you're talking about internal tools and whatnot, then, you know, you've got two different playbooks, two different sets of procedures, two different standards, and often, you know, there's the things that can be done in both front ends, but if you use front end A, it configures or delivers or sets or deploys something slightly different than front end B, and then someone tries to go and edit that in front end B, and then you now have conflicts and new bugs that are interactions between vNext and vNow.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really just been in the last 10 years that developers have seen that there are solutions to this. The whole refactoring movement, and a lot of our audiences are system administrators, so they might not be intimately familiar with this, but that's where basically um, you you keep making small change after small change after small change instead of these big leap releases.
Yeah, and that's a really valuable thing, and you want to encourage people to do that. If you can find a way to quantify, how much is wrong with your service. How many times does an engineer make the wrong decision because it was too difficult to make the right decision. Find some way to put that in a perspective that managers can understand, and that's very, very difficult, because how do you quantify the debt? How do you quantify the suck, as I like to say? It's very hard. You can't. If you put a number on it, you tell a manager, "Here's a number that we want to watch," and if you can tell them, "Okay, we did this, and this week or this month, and that number changed this way," then there might be ways you can convince that, okay, it is worth investing in improvements and so on. But that's a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think another difficulty in that conversation is often the developers say, "Oh, but you don't understand, this particular change just cannot be done without a major rewrite." And I hate to say, you're wrong, but actually there are better ways. There's a really good book. Jared Richardson has a book called Ship It, which just for every one of those, we can't possibly do it, he has a way of doing it live.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I call those situations failures of imagination. It's like it's not that it can't be done, it's that you aren't thinking about the problem in a way that allows you to find the solution that's there, that's waiting for you to pick it up and run with it.
Right, or they're not thinking about it in an operational perspective.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of developers don't have operational experience.
No,
especially if your company has a history of making shrink-wrap software, you haven't had to care about operation.
Yeah, and so and that's where the DevOps model does help somewhat, in that it invites developers, product developers, feature developers to participate in the operation of the product and gain experience. And the hope is that they'll take those learnings back and build that into their work on the day-to-day thing, their day-to-day activities. And that's the ideal state. Sometimes it works that way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, it becomes, oh, this is the week where I'm on call. I'm the escalation path, and I'm now distracted and taken away from all my quote-unquote real work. They go and do that, and then they don't take any learnings from that and apply that to their real world. And I think part of that's a failure on our part, from people who are more on the operations side, where we need to teach them the learnings. We see obviously that, oh, these are the flaws that are leading to those outages. Teach them how to write a post-mortem that doesn't just say end with component X. It asks the question, why did component X fail? What was the impact? What could have been done to mitigate, a sudden spike in latency from one subsystem to another that you can do in your software to prevent that from happening? Why was it so hard to fail over? Why was it that we couldn't shift customers from this cluster to that other cluster where we had spare capacity? What features could be built into the tool? That type of direction to the DRI or the on-call DevOps engineer helps them take away more useful learnings.
That's a really interesting point. So what I hear you saying is by having the developers go through that mental process of writing down what could have been done better, it makes them, think about the things that they can do, and probably inspires them to actually code up those features.
Yeah, and it's difficult to write a good post-mortem, a good root cause analysis document, and it's not, you need to help provide guidance for that. Some organizations just decide, okay, we're going to hand the pager to the developers, and that'll just make it go. But what is a conversation I haven't seen happen is, how do we implement this in a way that is controlled and actually adds value and grows those engineers, not just makes them take care of the playbooks and then takes them away from a week at a time from their feature development.
Yeah, it's not enough to make them feel the pain. They have to feel the development part of what we do, which is the root cause analysis and the multi-factor analysis and the planning for how do we deal with failure.
Yep.
All the stuff that we do, they should be intimately involved in all of that, just as we should have more involvement for our own benefit and our own learning in how these products are developed. Nothing is done in a vacuum.
Yeah, and this is, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we need the experience just as much as they do.
Yeah, and this is where communication skills are important. These soft skills. Why isn't there a track at least, or more of a track of how do you manage your peers? How do you improve communication? I know Tom's got a lot of good information on that stuff, but it's true. It's like it's that skill of talking in a way that you can work collaboratively. When you do, when you are dealing with a developer who says that shuts down and doesn't want to talk about, the failings inside the service, how do you grow beyond that? That's one of the topics of the talk that I'm giving at SRECon in 2 weeks, I think. And it's a tool that we've developed, which is a way of running a meeting that tries to get developers to share the faults and the flaws in their service that they know about, so that you can then be prepared. I like to say that your SRE or your operations team, they're like your lawyer, your priest, your doctor. Hiding things from them, not sharing information with them, can only backfire you in the long run. But it's a very but it's a very human nature to not want to tell you everything that I know that I messed up and all the shortcuts I took to get the product done.
So I hope you're going to consider submitting a version of that talk for Lisa. I mean, the call for proposals is open right now.
Certainly. Certainly. It's, I thought it might be a little bit duplicative, but it is a different audience. So
it's a different audience. Yeah.
Yeah, I will do that.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, what reaction has the talk generated? Did anybody, not only at Lisa, but after Lisa, have you been contacted by people saying, yeah, we learned from this, or we're implementing this, or have you received any feedback at all?
I have gotten a few emails and a few tweets, but the tone is generally like, okay, yeah, then how do we talk about it otherwise? And this is the hard thing, is I don't have easy answers for how you solve the problem of quantifying the suck. All I know is that if you put a number on something and put it in front of a manager, they will generally help you change that number, whether it's up or down or sideways. And that's the follow-on. It's like, a conversation needs to happen where it's like, okay, let's figure out how we can eliminate this in a tactical way when we're sometimes at arm's length from the actual product development itself. It's easy to say, well, just go in and fix the product, but no, some products are genuinely complex, and not every operations team, in fact, most operations don't have development capacity inside their team. So ultimately, you're trying to convince someone else to do work that fixes things that they screwed up in the first place. And they probably screwed it up not because they wanted to, because developers don't want to make bad products. But they have deadlines, they have schedules, they have demands to produce results, and so they make trade-offs, and those trade-offs add up. And this is where I myself am guilty of using things like calling it the suck, and that creates a very pejorative, antagonistic relationship with the developers, because you're basically saying, let's try and count all the ways that you've messed up. So
maybe viscosity would be a better word for it.
Yeah, viscosity. We call them opportunities for enhancement, opportunities for improvement. Because I recently went through an exercise where we did a large analysis of a service, and the goal of it was to come up with, about 100 different items that needed to go and be addressed. And I was like, oh God, I can't call these defects. I can't call these issues. Because then that eliminates the trust that I'd built with the team over the 2 months where we were meeting and going through their product in deep detail about how it's run, how it's built, how it's delivered. And so we decided to call them all opportunities.
Opportunities.
Yeah.
I was thinking viscosity. I think when most people hear viscosity, they think about oil, which is improving the situation. Maybe, I don't know what, in physics terms, what do you measure the opposite of viscosity with? These would be friction. These are friction points.
Yeah. I mean, a big indicator, and this is where one of the numbers that we've come up with that tries to quantify how much technical debt there is in a code base is the speed of the inner and outer loops of development. You've got the inner loop, which is how often a developer checks in a change to the service, and you have the outer loop, which is how often batches of changes go out into production. And so that number, you can measure in hours or days, or in some cases weeks and months. What is the time from the time a developer types a line of code to that code is executing user requests in production? That's one of the numbers we've keyed on, and we've studied several teams, and the teams that have shorter times from developer keyboard to user click tend to have less technical debt. They tend to have cleaner code bases. They have more unit testing. They just have better overall hygiene inside their service. And so time to click, if you will, that number, that's now become something that we're reporting on. And so maybe that is a good surrogate metric.
Right. Caskey, we're getting a lot of background feedback, or not feedback, but just...
The wind is picked up. I went outside hoping to get better connectivity, but I'll go huddle beside a building.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, time to click is really a useful thing. I think, you use the term proxy, and I think that is a really good point, because it is a proxy. It's not a direct measurement of that. In fact, that could lead. I mean, you need to have some metric, but it could lead to the wrong behavior. It could lead to managers. Like if managers were rated on, just that time, they would start doing stupid things that would get you faster clicking.
And outages, because they're remove all the safeties so that we can launch faster.
Right, but the flip side is, what is valuable is the. I mean, what you really want to measure, which is really impossible, but ultimately the speed of your release process should indicate how confident you are in your ability to make releases. Sadly, you can't really measure confidence directly either.
Yeah, and anytime you come up with a metric, someone's going to game the metric, and that's an unfortunate thing.
But I'm more worried about metrics leading to bad incentives, perverse incentives.
Very much so, yeah.
So, the metric that says any host in this cluster being down is bad, so people design clusters with only 2 hosts instead of the 12 they really need, because 2 hosts are less likely to go down than 12.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's getting those perverse incentives encouraging bad behavior, or at least well-intentioned according to the metric decisions, but fundamentally flawed from an engineering perspective.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a moment to remind our viewers, our live viewers, that the Q&A is available. Upper right-hand corner, click on the Q&A button. You may need to click on the 3x3 grid to find the Q&A button, but we invite your input. Tom, you had an interesting question. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and ask it now.
So not all sysadmins are in a developer/operations paradigm. So how can we address this with just sysadmins? I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, first of all, don't call them just sysadmins. Come on.
Oh, I meant exclusively sysadmins.
Yes, I understand what you meant. But even as sysadmins, I mean, there's the product that the development team is building, but even as sysadmins, we have technical debt. When was the last time you looked at how your ticket queues were assembled, and how your alert rules were managed, and how fast can you make a change to your systems? There are systems that are fully under the control of sysadmins, and we're part of the problem too. We've built debt into how we're managing and deploying equipment. What is the time it takes for you to provision?
Oh no.
Oh, you dropped out.
Well, he's still connected, but we've lost audio. So yeah. Vamp part 2, Tom.
Yes. So, but this time I'm writing down what time it happened, which is going to make editing a lot easier.
Yeah, there he goes. He just dropped.
Okay.
His phone probably lost coverage, is what most likely, because of the wind. We made him go inside because of the wind, and he lost cell coverage.
So I can tell you some technical that I'm dealing with on my project. I'm working on a project, and inside the code and everything, there are 4 different things called servers. Yes, And so we have these conversations with, well, what about when the server talks to the server and sends a server record? And so, hey, welcome back.
Are you there? Are you with us? Well, we'll give him a second to get started. He'll speak up when he can, I'm sure.
So one of our bits of technical debt is we plan in a week or two, we're going to have a week-long project that we will be adding no new features, fixing no bugs. We will simply be rearranging the code so that instead of 4 different things all called servers, we're going to figure out names for them and rename all of our modules and variables and stuff. We'll probably break everything in the process, but we now have a good test environment, so we should be able to confidently make those changes.
Yeah, as part of my technical debt, I'm now split between 2 jobs, and the second job did not have a sysadmin for a while. So there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be trimmed.
Well, and I have another totally non-developer thing, but I used to maintain the automated install system for an operating system that was used at our site, and there was like a 1 in 10 chance that it would fail because there was one fragile little bit, and we always thought, oh, we should really go back and fix that thing, and well, but there's it's not the end of the world, and we have other things that are more burning issues that are on our plate, but we but that was technical debt. There was a bug that everyone in the team knew how to work around, but once we fixed it, everyone was like, it's not that this is saving me 10 minutes a day, it's that it's saving me the fact that the frustration puts me in a bad mood for the next hour, right? And you have that cognitive load that you have to deal with.
Right, and of course, every time you switch state or have to go look up how to work around this thing, you lose progress because now you have to get back into it. And that is, I make decisions. It's like, okay, what is my priority right now? I need to get this service online. How much time can I spend doing it right, and how much time can I spend doing it quickly? Mm-hmm. And I hate making that call, but I make it way too frequently. Hello again. Are you back?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. Is the audio quality any better than when I was on the laptop before?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, okay, great.
No problem. We vamped by talking about some technical debt that we've had on our projects.
Oh, good. So, have you confessed any sins?
Oh, yeah.
I did. We both did.
In front of a national audience or an international audience.
Well, yep. So yeah, I was just talking about the fact that there are systems that aren't just a product that we all are responsible for, and that we can improve ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was going to move on to what are some techniques we can use to I'd say pay down our technical debt, because that's encouraging the bad metaphor, but what have you found works?
Well, one thing that I think is beneficial is trying to find ways to get the developers out of the product treadmill for a little bit of time. We call it ring fencing developers, where basically you work with the development managers and you say, hey, what if we focused on something like improving your build process, right? That's a place that often has a lot of technical debt. Your test, build, deploy cycle. We'd like that to be better. How about you allocate one person from your team, we'll dedicate some person from our team, and we'll sit down together. It'll be a project. We'll measure something like, the time the unit test coverage, or the time it takes to run your unit test. And we're going to make a project just do that. And that takes that developer out of their regular sprint cycle that's focused on features, and it dedicates them to working on things that aren't feature related explicitly. It's something that ideally a dev might be like, okay, I'm looking at my feature backlog, and I've got all these features to add, but I really want to make sure that at least 10% of my resources are spent improving my code base without a feature focus. Very few dev managers are enlightened to the degree that they would slow down their feature velocity in order to improve their code base, even though if you sat down with them and talked about the fact that, hey, the lack of speed in your release process actually makes it harder for you to release quality features, because the longer it takes to release your product, the more difficult it is to release your product, the more you cram into each release. That means there are more simultaneous bugs going out in each release, which means there's more things that can go wrong all at once. The faster you release and the smaller the delta between each release, there's less to go wrong. The surface area that can be impacted is smaller.
So putting this in the sysadmin's perspective, and in the sysadmin's wheelhouse, as it were, we have the same issue. I mean, whether you're using Puppet or Chef or in-house built configuration management system, it's pretty much the same set of problems. The more you shortcut, the more likely you are to find yourself going, oh man, now I have to spend 3 months just refactoring everything I've done because I need to bring in another OS release that's different, or I need to start supporting systemd, whereas before it was all init and SMF. It's all the same problem, whether it's a webby front end to a new application, or configuration management, or backing up your systems. Backup systems can get quite complex. They all suffer from the same problem of inattention or rush, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. Well, there's good speed and there's bad speed. It's one thing to be good because you know that you can perform reliably. It's like you ever watch the videos of people out at the Bonneville Salt Flats and so on. It's like they're moving very, very fast, and you get a little bit of duct tape there, but it's not all cobbled together.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what suggestions do you have for someone who's a sysadmin that doesn't have a product manager because it's their own technical debt?
Well, I would say they should start examining their own systems. They probably are using something like Puppet or Chef. How comfortable are they at making large changes and pushing them out in their own environment? Where is the technical debt that you own in your own deployment? Are you doing enough to automate your own services in a way that adds value? So that look at where you spend your time and where's the drudgery, the pain in your own environment, and what can you do to innovate your way out of that particular situation? What have you been putting off because you don't want to do it because it's going to be painful to do? Odds are that where the pain is where the problem is very often.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. I think most of sysadmins know where their bottlenecks and speed bumps are.
Okay.
So
continue the thought.
So how do I find the time to make these changes?
Well, I was in a situation at a previous company where we had this problem that the system was so noisy and so painful and so much effort that there literally was no time to go and do the work that we knew we needed to do that would solve our problem. What we did, to be blunt, we let the system fall over. We said, you know what, we have to shave a day a week or 3 hours a day where we just let the system fall down and we focus on other stuff, and then we go back and clean up. Yeah, quality of service was degraded for several months. The SLAs we picked certain areas where we say, the SLA doesn't matter there. It always matters, but we're just going to say, we can't maintain that SLA with the human that we're throwing at it right now, so we're actually going to throw fewer humans at it so we can shave off one person to go and spend their time innovating while everybody else picks up the slack and works more hours to innovate their way out of the problem. Now, working more hours, I'd never want to advocate that, and so what I mean by work more hours is that their rotations were longer, but they were of the same capacity. So if you're on a 9 to 5 rotation, instead of being 5 days of being on call, you go 6 days, or you go 7 days at a time, so that one person could stay out of the rotation completely and try and solve the fundamental problems that are causing the pain. And that's a bit of a management function, or dealing with your peers, where you say, okay, who wants to volunteer to not be on call for the next 3 months and try and improve things?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You've got to take someone out of the loop. You can't
And-
say, let's work.
And-
We're already working too many hours. Let's work even more.
Yeah.
So I
Sysadmins
want
also
to make an
have-
observation here, if I can. I did this at a previous employer. I was hired and brought in. I looked at what we had, and my description was, we're using the water we're bailing out of the boats to put out the fire in the rigging. So I'm going to build a raft that we can all jump onto and sail away from the boat that's engulfed in flames. And on the one hand, we got a product up that worked very well and was supported for years afterwards. On the other hand, there was a lot of resentment from the other sysadmins who had to keep bailing out the boat and putting out the fire in the rigging while I built these new rafts.
Yeah.
Also, there's a comment from the audience I want to give after you give your response.
Yeah, this is where hopefully this is something that the team comes to an agreement that okay, someone's going to have to do this. It's for the good of the group. But also, sysadmins have very well earned their reputation as being a bunch of grumpy naysayers, and the answer is always no until you can prove otherwise. We've earned that reputation because we very often are grumpy. Our jobs are hard, so we got to make sure that we focus on what do we have control over. We have control over our tone of the conversation we have with the people we're working with the product owners and so on. Realize that okay, you won't be able to vent your frustration, but if you can put that to the side and say, all right, what do I need to do to build a constructive relationship with this person to then find common ground? This is again soft skills. I'm convincing myself that I'm going to have to submit a couple talks on having on difficult conversations and strategies for having them with people. We talked earlier about developers, who say, "Oh, I can't fix that without, it can't be done." Well, to what degree are we saying we can't do that? And sometimes be the bigger person in the conversation. Let the other person take the glory and find a way to make common ground and move forward.
So the comment
Absolutely.
comment from our viewers: sysadmins know, but product owners, quote unquote, don't necessarily know. It helps a lot just to tell them. This is from Paul English.
Yeah, you can never over communicate. We talk about DevOps getting developers in and participating on call. Get product owners, whether they're called dev managers, product managers, program managers. Have them participate in the on-call. Have them shadow the operations of a service. Make sure that they see what it is that it takes to keep the system alive. A lot of them just don't know. Ultimately, most humans are reasonable people, and most humans don't want other humans to suffer. And so, finding a way of socializing that in a way that isn't griping and nagging and complaining and whining. Yes, it feels good to whine, but it doesn't make the problem go away. You got to find the constructive solutions.
Yeah, and I think people are not going to make a change unless it's explained to them in terms of how it's going to benefit them. And it sounds selfish, but that's how the world works. So you can't tell a product manager, this is going to make your developers happy, or it's going to make me happy, or it's going to make the system easier to operate, or I'll be paged less often, because they're not being woken up. You have two choices. You could either put the developers, have them also on rotation so they start getting woken up, so you're spreading the pain, or you could explain it in terms of, to the product manager, you're actually going to develop more features in the long run faster if you get rid of this, these friction speed bumps or whatever you want to call it.
And to bring us back to the original topic of my talk about, don't call it technical debt. Maybe it's not about finding a different word for it. Let's be clearer when we're saying that it's not just there's technical debt. It's that, okay, the build process used to take 2 hours. It now takes 15 hours. What is there? Let's fix that problem. Don't stop at technical debt. Unpack that word in your org and look at your product and see what are the things that are causing us problems. And actually put a name to them, and then talk about what it would take to fix them while still delivering the service that presumably is the business value that you need day to day to keep the lights on. Don't stop at the word technical debt and use that and hope that everyone understands, because what you do is you get a bunch of people nod, yes, we got technical debt. Instead, no, we don't have that. We have these 14 different pain points in this order that I propose we go and find a strategy for fixing. That's a much more productive conversation than every time you pass someone in the hallway or over the water cooler saying, man, I hate all our technical debt.
Right.
Have
Yeah.
constructive conversations about what exactly you mean when you say that. Every time you do hit a pain point, write it down, send yourself an email, and revisit those at the beginning of the week when you have energy, and say, okay, what could I do this week, or who do I need to talk to find out how we can go about building a strategy for fixing this or that or the other thing. But make a concrete list.
That does bring up a point that I occasionally remember to make, and that is we speak to each other in code. We
Very
say,
much so.
I have technical debt, and all the other sysadmins in the room go, yeah, okay, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually translate to anybody else in the room who's listening. This is a common. Every industry, every field has their short code for this huge long thing happened, and we all know what it was, so we're going to use, number 13 just occurred.
We all have our tribal languages. There's the sysadmin tribe, there's the hardware operations tribe, there's the tech support tribe, there's the developer tribe, there's the manager tribe, there's the executive tribe, and we all speak different languages, and we can't just hope that it fixes itself. So let's own that and try and find ways of speaking in terms. And it ends up being that you have to use words like, oh, my ask for you is this, and your eye twitches when you use words like that. But talking to a product manager, he's gonna, and you want to say, I want to do this. Say, here's my ask. It involves this, this, and that, and then it means speaking a foreign language. But if it gets the job done, that's ultimately sysadmins know that we get the job done. Unfortunately, we often sacrifice our health and our relationships and our time to get the job done. But a sysadmin gets the job done. But let's think bigger about what the job is. And our own lives will get easier in the process.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about a lot of strategic things like revamping like stuff at the manager level, revamping or automating our software release and testing process. Let's get some tactical things. I mean, one thing that's very tactical that I've done is I've had like technical debt day, like bad documentation is technical debt. So I've declared, 3 Wednesdays from now, we're all going to drop all other projects and we're all going to just work on fixing the documentation. And it became a team activity. So that's one thing I've done that's successful. Let's talk about techniques like that.
Huh. Wow. That's interesting. I like the hackathon model of, okay, this is going to be the day where everyone decides to do this and we set other concerns aside. I'm trying to think of what other things that can be things. I'm thinking all of long-term projects and so on, building instrumentation or something like that. So I'm afraid. Go ahead.
One of the things I do is whenever I'm working from home because I'm not feeling well or because it's snowing and I can't get to work, those are my technical debt days. Those are the days when I go in and top up the documentation or go back and do that thing I've been meaning to do for several months, but I was always getting distracted by people walking into my office and saying, hey, I need. If I'm not in the office, they can't do that. So working remotely occasionally, just take a day and work in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And plug through as much of the technical debt as you can.
Yeah, on your calendar, block out time, make defensible space where you can go and solve that problem. That's definitely a thing. Also, think of yourself, every week, what is the one thing that you want to talk to someone about finding a strategy to address? This is more of a developer thing, but I remember I got into a funk where I felt like I wasn't doing enough real work. I was spending all my time in meetings and so on, and so I set a goal for myself of I would commit a chunk of code every single day. That was my goal. I would make sure I had a check-in every day because I would go 2 weeks between check-ins because I was spending all the time in meetings and I feel like I wasn't getting any of the quote-unquote real work done. And so I said for the next 2 months, every single day I'm at work, I'm going to commit something to the code base. And it would get to the point where it's 5:30 and like, wait, I haven't opened up a text editor all day. Quick, I need to find something. They'd be one-liners. They'd be, I'm going to go and look for a to-do or a typo, and I'm just going to do it because then then at least I've done something. A great metaphor that someone shared with me recently is that to solve many problems, there's you might have everything's bad here, and then okay, here we're talking about instrumentation, right? Now everyone wants a beautiful dashboard that shows them exactly the health of their system, and when something goes wrong, one light lights up that says, here's the problem. Right? But in order to make that happen, there's so much that needs to go into doing that. You start with a completely uninstrumented code base, but then you got to add the instrumentation. Then you got to add the monitoring that then goes and reads that instrumentation. Then you got to build dashboards, and you got to build the right dashboards around that. And so this seems like a very big problem. But somebody said, think of it like a little line of 4 red buckets, right? And anytime you move the ball from one bucket to the next, you're doing good work. So don't think of the whole problem. Think of it in terms of, here's the bucket. If you can move the ball forward one bucket at a time, so eventually all the balls are in the right bucket, you're doing good work. And congratulate yourself and celebrate those little victories where at least something's happened, that yes, the problem hasn't gone away, but today it's a little better than it was before. Granted, it doesn't feel better because these are very tiny increments. We're turning the temperature up 1 degree at a time, but eventually the water will be boiling.
Sure,
and
sure.
the frog will be dead.
And all the metaphors will be mixed. Yeah, I just want to
do one last call for QA first. Just a reminder, last call QA up in the upper right corner. Look for the 3x3 grid. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
That also relates very closely to the minimum viable product concept. Yeah. That you don't try to launch. Don't say we're going to build this for a year and then launch the most amazing thing. Say 2 weeks from now we're going to launch a web page and it's just going to be a scaffolding and none of the buttons are going to work. But we'll have learned the web framework. We'll have configured the load balancers. We'll set up the VMs. That's 1-2 weeks of solid work. Yeah. And then every week we're going to try to make one more button work than last week. And a year from now we'll have an awesome system. But during that year, the buttons that did work, our coworkers can use that, and they're actually getting a productivity boost instead of sitting around saying, well, a year from now or 6 months from now, we're going to finally get some use out of this.
Yeah, but the minimum viable product and the whole agile concept of demo day or you have to have something demonstrable, those are great things to encourage people to develop, but there's also that insidious other side, is that when where the minimum viable product becomes the goal, and then people stop and they move on to something else. And now, like, well, wait a minute, where's the instrumentation? Where's the backup procedure? Where's the release management? Where's everything else? And so it's a double-edged sword in that sometimes people see it as an excuse to not do to not eat their vegetables and do all the hard work, like unit testing and so on. And so when doing that, definitely need to watch out for the opposite reaction, which is the negative one, where people stop before they've finished the product. Documentation, release notes, technical guides, playbooks for incidents, alerting, all that stuff.
Sure, but I'd play devil's advocate and say there's been a lot of projects that did release after a full year that didn't have any of those things either.
Yeah, well, I think I was playing devil advocate to your idea. Now you're the devil's advocate.
Wow, we're like double devil advocates. Yeah. Cool.
So then there's those products that after a year get canceled or pushed out when still incomplete because executives decided they don't want to spend any more money on it. So you either ship what you got or don't ship at all.
Yep.
You have to balance the perfect is the enemy of the good
against
is the good enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think at this point, we're pretty close to the end of our hour.
I think it's that time.
I'm going to go ahead and start the closing spiel, our classic, famous, everybody knows, the quick three questions. So you ready for those rapid fire questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, question number 1. What was your first computer?
286SX, bought it at Sears.
Awesome. Question number 2. Have you ever had to press the big red switch that is the emergency power off button in a server room or data center?
No, I haven't, and I consider that a good thing.
Indeed. Question number 3. Who's your What?
I have inadvertently unplugged the wrong thing.
I think anyone who's been in this industry for more than a year and has access to the server room has that story to tell. Question number 3, who is your favorite computer scientist or author?
It would be Tufte. Visual Display of Quantitative Information is a book anybody building a dashboard needs to read.
Fantastic. Well, Caskey, this has been a fantastic episode. We're so glad that you've been here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you so much for coming back and then coming back again. We appreciate all the effort you've put into being here. That brings us to the end of this month's Lisa Conversation. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Kim from Usenix for all the backstage work, to our live listeners for their questions, and to our guest, Caskey Dickson. I'm sure I said your name wrong. I apologize. From Microsoft for joining us. If this inspired you to submit a talk or a tutorial, now is an excellent time to read the call for proposals for Lisa 16. It closes on April 25th, so you have just shy of a month, but still some time. Please consider submitting a talk.
Our next conversation will be with Casey Claffey and some of her co-authors. It'll be recorded on April 26, 2016. We hope you join us, and you'll find details about it on the website. This is Tom Limoncelli.
And this is Lee Damon. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.